Let's do this. The Cult of Hockey podcast by the faithful and for the faithful. I'm David Staples of the Edmonton Journal, and I'm here today with Kurt Leavins. Welcome, Kurt.
Hey, David. Seems like we've been talking about the possibility of Mike Babcock coming to Edmonton for forever. Well, all that's done. He's here, and well, you never say never about looking back. It's I think time to start looking forward.
Yeah, so he had his press conference today, Kurt, and I guess I just feel more settled with the decision. It was pretty unsettling at first, the news. And it sounds like it was Stan Bowman's idea from the press conference that he's the one who thought it up and pursued Babcock. And because of all the smoke and fire around Babcock, it was pretty unsettling, I think, for many fans, and still is for many fans. But having watched him, he's not. He comes from more of the Corey Perry, Evander Kane school of contrition than from the Stan Bowman school of contrition. He's not a very contrite person. He is a great white shark. He moves forward, looking for the next thing to eat, and or in his case, next game to win. And it was, the thing I'm left with most of all was Babcock asked to meet with the top Oilers players, Hyman, Draisaitl, and McDavid. The meeting seemed to go exceedingly well, according to Babcock. I don't think anyone would be saying it went so well if the players weren't completely in line with that. Bob Stauffer's been saying it went so well, and it's been used as a hammer by the Oilers to shape public opinion in favor of the decision. In terms of many fans coming over and supporting this decision, Kurt, I think that was the key fact, the fact that the players are supporting Babcock in this. But from Babcock's telling of it, it just sounds like they are on the same page. Like this is in fact the case. And there's a realization that what was happening with the Oilers wasn't working. And it's something we talked about all last year, was the lack of defensive discipline from the top of the roster. So the very best players, McDavid and Draisaitl, to the bottom, where they just couldn't get it done defensively and there was no way to win. And it sounds like they're all talking about that now. The players, Babcock, everyone's on the same page. So I feel more settled about the future. I think it was fairly unsettling for the Oilers fan base this last 6 weeks. And I think, for me at least, that's passing. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I have two big thoughts and one small one. My small one was an opportunity like this allows us to parse all of the supposition and conversations that have been out there, and whether those things were true or not. And I think we learned that a few of those things were just hearsay, like the fact that the Oilers pushed the players on Babcock and it was the other way around.
Yeah.
It's so I think this is very helpful in that it airs some grievances and it helps some truth find some light. So I think it was beneficial from that standpoint. I have two main views though. Off the ice, I agree with you. Mike Babcock was not as contrite as many people will have wanted him to be. But you know what I think, David? I think Mike Babcock is a very confident man, confident in his abilities to coach. And I think he believes that a large percentage of his toolbox is what makes him successful. I don't think the leopard changes his spots all that much. If Mike Babcock is smart, and I think no matter how you feel about him as a person, I believe he's smart, then I think he will learn from some of his past experiences, which should make him better. And I want to go to the quote about him, about whether he crossed the line in Columbus. And his quote was, "No, to be honest with you, anytime you make anybody feel uncomfortable in your life, you should take a look at yourself and say, how could I do that better?" And I think that's what you do, is as a person, you always try to be better at what you do. The situation in Columbus, they've had a full review, and I'm thankful NHL and NHLPA for doing that. It didn't work out for us. We're excited about making it work here. I think that's Mike Babcock code for, okay, got it. I'll tweak this and I'll tweak that going forward. But if you think it's a whole new born again Mike Babcock, I've got some swampland to sell for you. So that's off the ice.
I agree, Kurt. It was not his first word was no, and
Yeah.
the NHL exonerated me essentially. And
what's that quote from Popeye? I am what I am.
He could have been a bit more forthcoming, Kurt. Even if he wasn't contrite to me, I would have appreciated him describing what had happened, what the gist of it was in his own words, and what he thought about that. Because it sounds to me like he's looking at players' phones, and he wants to look at as a way of discussing their family life and get to know who they are. But he's so out of touch with the modern world, he doesn't understand. Like, I wouldn't want to hand over my phone. I don't have anything on my phone. Like, it's just, but I still wouldn't. I don't like handing my phone to anybody. So I get the hesitation of the players there, and I just wish he had been more. I don't care if he was contrite about how contrite. Just tell us what happened. Might have been a little bit helpful.
Another one of his quotes was, "It was very evident before the year started in Columbus, that is, I hadn't benched anybody, I hadn't talked to anybody, I hadn't sat anyone out, and it was evident that we weren't together as a staff right from the get-go." So what I read into that, and I want to be careful saying this isn't Babcock saying this is what I'm reading into that, is that he didn't think that was a conducive situation from the word go, and things got worse. Right? If you're Mike, why are you going back and giving everything in detail? That's the last thing he wants to do.
It is. I know.
You just described a shark always swims forward. Well, precisely. Right. So that's there will be more of the off ice that we can discuss for sure. But that's my main take, and it's interesting that ours is comparable. On the ice, I was very encouraged by what I heard. And yeah. I'll boil it down to the Steve Yzerman example that he gave, which was Steve Yzerman was a great player, was scoring lots of points, but didn't have any cups yet. And so what he's saying is it's not so much the personnel on this team, but how that personnel plays. And I think from the average casual fan, to someone like you or I who charts every single little detail of every single little game, you see that in evidence and you agree with that. You know, as great as these players are, you see holes in their game that it's like, man, all you had to do was shoulder check there. Right? How many times did we say that this last season, right? So I think that's extremely encouraging. And the thing is, David, Mike Babcock will have no problem looking those guys in the eye and saying that to them and enforcing it. So if you make your best players better, that takes you a long way down the road. And then the other thing I really liked was the inclusion of other players, making them feel involved and that they had a role in the team. And we saw evidence of that with previous coaches, but it never lasted. It never took. And it eventually ended up back to double shifting 29 and 97. It feels like Mike Babcock will be the first coach of these two guys to actually stick to his guns and not go to that as a fallback. And keep in mind, this isn't all rookie coaches that we're talking about, like Chris Knobloch and you know, and that sort of thing. We're also talking about Dave Tippett and Ken Hitchcock. Those guys fell victim to that too. So the words he's saying about how they're going to play on the ice, I like. The proof, however, will be in the pudding.
He certainly drew a very deep line in the sand on that point about everyone having a role in the team and other players getting more ice time. It is the most forcefully I've ever heard that talked about by an Oilers coach.
Yep.
and it'd be hard for him to go back on it. Doesn't mean we're not going to see McDavid and Draisaitl on the same line. We might, but I mean, that can also be a way of getting other players more ice time. Kurt, I think he said one thing that I thought was really, which is true, and which is a really unpopular thing to say, is, and you can take it two ways. Sometimes people say total jerk things, and they just say, "Well, I'm just being honest." It's not an excuse for being a dick, as Jason Gregor put it today to Babcock, or a jerk, or obnoxious, or racist, or sexist. I'm just being honest. That is not. But Babcock framed it this way: is that when you are honest with people in really tough situations, such as, like, you're not playing, your career's coming to an end in the NHL, and I'm telling you this right now, that is very painful for people, and they're defensive and they don't want to hear it, and it can lead to really bad feelings. That does seem to be his nature. He's that guy who lays it out, and without a lot of sympathy. And it's harsh medicine for people for that to happen in their lives. But I think Babcock's right that that has to happen. As the controversial Jordan Peterson says, it's how we keep each other sane, is by telling the truth to each other about each other. And we need other people to do that. And that's that's what he does. So I think that's really helpful. It's funny, Kurt, the last 3 playoff years, I felt in some ways bad saying unpopular things about McDavid, Draisaitl's, Nurse's defensive play. But I really, in watching the games closely, I was thinking they just can't win the cup if in the big games Leon Draisaitl wanders, or Connor McDavid overcommits and loses his position. And they're getting scored on against Florida again and again and again because of things like that. It wasn't just them, it was other players making mistakes too. But when the very best players do it, they're on the ice so much, and they want to win so much, but they will never win unless they change some of their defensive habits. And I don't know if other people felt it was, like, if that was an unpopular thing to say, but I felt unpopular saying it. It always made me uneasy to say that. I'm not like Mike Babcock, perhaps, in being so forthright. But I like it that it's come out now, that it's kind of come to the fore, because I think it is the truth. I think he is right. And someone said on the internet today, I don't know what to think about Babcock, but I like that they've hired a coach who has said this to those players. That's the guy I want coaching the Oilers. And I agree with that. I think it's the reason I think there's a chance here. And the reason you brought up Kurt as well. He's not a rookie. He's not Woodcroft or Knobloch. He doesn't have to worry. It's not his first time through. Those guys learned a lot their first time through. I bet you they're going to be more forthright their next time through.
Sure.
He's going to do it the right way. And I think it could make a difference. I'm kind of hopeful today.
A couple of thoughts off of your comments, which I thought were really excellent. One of the people who taught me how to be a manager taught me in really tough meetings, the best first line is, the purpose of this conversation is to ... Like, rip the Band-Aid off right away. No, so how are the kids? How's the dog? Like, no, the purpose of this conversation is to discuss your work ethic. So it's not like this is brand new in management. It's been going on for decades, right? So a quick thought on that. On the players being receptive to his straight talk, his quote was, "Obviously they were comfortable or I wouldn't be here."
Yeah.
I liked that. The other thing that I heard him say near the end of the media avail, which lacked contrition, but I also felt contained truth bombs. quote, "It doesn't matter what I say here. What matters is what we do going ahead."
And that's, for someone as like me who spends a lot of time on social media, it's the truth about the Oilers and about any sports team. It just matters what happens on the ice. That's all that matters. There's lots of talk back and forth, blah, 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 panicking through the year. Listen, in the years 2024 and 2025, the 2 years they went to the Cup, the amount of panicking and criticism in the Oilers fan base during those 2 years, and people saying it's all over, they can't do it, blah, blah, blah. It's just like endless, But what matters is what happens on the ice. So we'll see. We'll see what happens on the ice. Any other thoughts or final thoughts or?
You know what? There was a good quote from DJ Smith, who lost in all this kind of today, is the fact that he's been hired as an associate coach. Of course, he was on the bench with them in Toronto, and this most recent season was in LA. On being straight with Babcock if situations don't seem right, and his exact quote was, "I'm not afraid to tell Mike the truth."
Yes. He's he's quite a interest. I have never seen him speak before. So I was quite impressed with him. Like, he seems like a good guy to be with.
And on the ice, he has excellent defensive credentials.
Yeah, apparently the last 2 years in LA, they've been a pretty good defensive team. So
yep, boring but but effective. I'm talking about LA.
There's some criticism of Babcock with the Leafs and how they did defensively, and when you look at that team's defense, like the players that they had on defense, in retrospect, like in terms of how their career went, he wasn't working with, Tim Horton and Jacques Laperriere. No, to go way back in my examples, some people were criticizing Babcock for going back to Steve Yzerman as his example, someone who retired 20 years ago. It's how we 60-plus-year-old guys.
Are we supposed to stop talking about how great of a player Wayne Gretzky was? Like, come on.
Yeah, who's been the best defensive defenseman in the last 10 years? Let me think. Jacob Slavin. So, yeah, he didn't have a lot of Jacob Slavins on his Maple Leaf teams then, so put it that way. It was pretty more Jake Gardiner than Jacob Slavin, so. Yeah, I'm glad it's done. I would have, I was hoping for Bruce Cassidy. This seems like a really interesting choice, and I am way more positive about this than I was, let's say, an hour ago before I heard Babcock talk.
I sure as hell don't think it's going to be boring, David.
Yeah. Even though he wasn't contrite. I mean, I kind of like that about Kane and Perry, right, as well. Like, they are who they are, these guys, and they can be no other. And I do expect them, if they've been doing really bad stuff, to be smart enough to stop doing that. And that goes for Kane and Perry too. And I think they both probably learned some lessons along those lines. Yeah. But
and Babcock said, "Look, I have good people in my life who tell me when I'm out of line."
Sounds like his wife is one of them.
I think she's probably pretty key. But it sounds like he talked about his adult kids a lot too.
Yeah.
Which I think is somewhat strategic. But I think all of us learn from our kids who are a younger generation. He's certainly not alone in that situation.
Well, there's probably one or two chips off the old block in his adult kids who are telling him exactly what they think about him. Yep. And they're now the same ages as a lot of the players are, right? So it's not like he's divorced from people that age. He's around them all the time.
Yep.
So, Kurt, let's move on. The Oilers made 2 signings, Jason Dickinson and Connor Murphy. Dickinson, what's your take?
Well, 2 thumbs up on both. I'll give you my Dickinson thing is, this just settles your lineup, right? It puts it in stone. McDavid, Draisaitl, Dickinson. 1, 2, 3. Boom, boom, boom. Unless you have an injury, you can look at an 84 game or whatever the hell it's going to be scheduled and go, those are your top 3 centers. And you would put those top 3 centers up against any other top 3 centers in the league. Good teams are strong down the middle. This team is. And further on Dickinson, he's a guy who understands his role. I've seen people say he's an elite defensive forward. What I think he is an extremely conscientious defensive forward. And that's the kind of guy that you want in that position. It's not that he's not going to make the odd mistake. He will, and he has. But he understands the consequences of his mistakes. And he, generally speaking, does the right thing on the ice. From a contract standpoint, I think that AAV is tremendous. I thought it might cost them a full $1 million more per year to get him. And obviously they gave up term in order to get the cost point down. I think term doesn't really bother me too much with Dickinson. He's young enough still that I'm really not too worried about the length of that contract. But getting him at 4 really gives Stan Bowman some critical room to move in terms of the cap.
I'm worried about the term of the deal. I like that they kept the cap hit down, Kurt. I understand what they're thinking. I was just the closer they got to signing him, I was just left with a feeling like maybe it's time to move on to Szymanski. And I understand. Like I think they needed to sign Murphy for sure. I'm just not sure that they needed to sign Dickinson. So when you look at the aging curves for checking forwards, so Dickinson will be 31, 32, 33, 34, and 35 in the 5 years of this deal. Let's give him the next 2 years. I think this year and next year, I think it's a pretty safe bet that he's going to be a decent NHL hockey player when he's 31 and 32. When you get to 33, Kurt, I was looking at Quant Hockey, and there's hardly any forwards in the NHL over the age of 33 who are pretty much checking line guys. That's their main thing. The offensive guys tend to hang on. You get out over the age of 35, for instance, and it's pretty much all superstars or long-time first and second line players. Over the age of 30, 35, it's guys like, I guess the closest would be Michael Backlund, but he was always a pretty good scorer. That would be but it's guys like Marchand, Patrick Kane, Anze Kopitar, Sidney Crosby, Corey Perry, Alex Ovechkin. They're the guys who hang on. But we don't have to worry about that because it only takes him to 35. The only guy last year, 35, who was a checker, there's only about 8 forwards who were getting decent playing time at even strength who were 35 last year in the NHL. There was some over 35 as well. There's another 10, let's say, over 35. There was Nick Dowd of Vegas, who at 35 is a checking line center. So there is one guy you can point to and say, okay, Dickinson could be like that. And at ages 34 and 33, there's, I guess, Blake Coleman, Eric Halla, Noel Acciari. They were 34 last year. And the 33-year-old group would include Jean-Gabriel Pageau, Jordan Martinook, Thomas Nosek. So there's just a handful of guys over the 33 and over, let's say 3 a year for those age groups who stick with it and are able to really be effective contributors as a third line player in the NHL past the age of 33 if you're just a checker. So the final 3 years of Dickinson's contract, unless he defies the odds, it's possible that he will, I have real concerns about. And if there was no replacement for him, but because Szymanski is such a good player, I just think that in terms of cap management, that's something that I would have really I would have thought really, really hard about and maybe not brought him back. I'm not criticizing them for bringing him back. I get it. And I understand the win now, how important win now is. It's absolutely critical. And maybe in the end, if I was thinking about that, if that was the number one priority, and it might be, then you do it. So because that probably is, you can put weight in it. But, I'm hoping McDavid will be here 5 years from now and Draisaitl will. And this contract could come back to haunt them in years 3, 4, and 5 of the deal.
Well, I disagree with you pretty strongly. The elephant in the room is Connor McDavid has 2 years left on his deal. anything about any contract past those 2 years, who the hell cares? It just doesn't. The term doesn't matter past that. It's what players do you have on your roster and what cap room do you have for the next 2 seasons that matters. Because if you think that this franchise is going to go ahead and win a Stanley Cup without him on your roster, I seriously doubt that. So I just think that's almost irrelevant. Plus, in 3 years, his no move trade, Dickinson's that is, relaxes substantially, goes to 16 teams. You can move him then. Like, so what's the big deal? I don't worry about that. And on the Szymanski thing, do you really want in May to be Stan Bowman going to Connor McDavid and saying, yeah, Connor, I know we didn't win again this year, but boy, we sure developed Josh Szymanski. Who the hell cares? Do you want to win or not? Josh Szymanski has not proved himself to be a third-line NHL center yet. Jason Dickinson has. If you want to win, he's the guy. Period.
I wouldn't be making my argument if I didn't think Szymanski wasn't up to it. I think he's up to it. And I think he's a good bet. And I think, when I look at Carolina, for instance, they moved on from a lot of good players who are about 30 years old, including Brett Pesce, right? Like he was a really good defenseman. They moved on from him. They just said, no, it's not in our plans. And I think that the win now philosophy has been there since the start with McDavid. And it's not necessarily always the right decision.
But David, it's changed. He's no longer in the middle of his 7-year contract. Now it's a 2. Like the math has changed.
So for me, it comes down to simply, I just think Szymanski can be as good a player as Dickinson this year. And because of that, I would be okay if they didn't bring him back. Now, Murphy, the career, it's not any different with defensemen. There's very few defensemen of like Connor Murphy who are still playing in the NHL. And so after the age of 33, 34. There's a handful, but they're just not that many. You get over the age of 35 and there's only 6 defensemen over the age of 35 who were top 40 Demon last year. And Brent Burns, Chris Letang, Drew Doughty, Jarrett Spurgeon, and Ryan McDonough. So he will be 33, 34, 35, 36, and 37, 36 and 37. Like the only guy who was a top 4D man over the age of 35 was Ian Cole, who is similar to Connor Murphy. So there's an example. There's a guy like Ian Cole who did it. He's with Utah and he was playing in the top 4 there. Then you get to age 35. The closest are Tyler Myers, Nick Jensen, and Brendan Dillon. So there's 3 guys who are kind of similar to Connor Murphy. So there's about 3 years on his contract, which are iffy. Unlike Dickinson, though, where I think they had a really good bet in Szymanski, there ain't no good bet in the next 2 years for filling in for Connor Murphy. They needed to sign Connor Murphy. They weren't going to they're not going to find anyone in free agency, I don't think, who's better than Connor Murphy, who was really good. And this is I think Dick Dickinson was okay to good with the Oilers. I see his attributes as a player. I don't think he's a brilliant defensive player. I think he's an okay defensive player. He's a marginal attacker, but he's a decent hockey player. I think Murphy was actually really good as Adam Larson and Chris Russell defensively, which is saying a ton because those guys were fantastic defenders. And they needed him. They needed a fantastic defender, and they got him. And so I'm okay with this. Isn't a religion for me where if you sign a contract, it's not going to work out in the final 3 years probably. I get it when you have to do that. In this case, they had to do it, and they kept his cap hit lower by having the extra years. That helps right now. I understand that as well. So I really approve of this deal. And by the way, Kurt, I did fan polls on both. It was like 85 to 90% support for both deals.
Yeah. So my take on on the Connor Murphy contract is I have more concern about the term on his contract for the reasons that you just detailed. He is older. He's not especially fast to begin with. It's more likely that his contract will not age as well as Dickinson's will, just because he's starting a couple years older right from the get-go, right? So I do get that. But again, the point was to keep your AAV down so you can afford more moving parts in your roster. And if you go to free agency, I don't think you're going to get anybody as good as Connor Murphy at 4.1. I just don't, right? And you and I both agree, we haven't seen anyone on the right side as solid on the Oilers since Adam Larsson left. And as you were aware, for my wish list, it was my number one priority for what I felt head office needed to get done in the offseason. So, yeah, there is a little more concern on the term with Murphy, but you needed him. His replacement isn't out there anywhere. And again, it's 2 more years of McDavid's contract. Who the hell cares what Connor Murphy does past his second year?
Indeed. With his case, Kurt, I just think the pickings, when you look at the cap going up, the pickings are going to be extremely slim and extremely expensive.
Agree.
There's just not going to be players. Like you're just not going to be able. So like if you're letting Dickinson go, let's say like they followed my advice and they didn't bring him back. Like I'm not saying that with the expectation they could sign someone better for cheaper. There's just not a chance in the world.
Yeah, your belief was an internal solution.
It's an internal solution. And with Murphy, there's no internal solution, not even close, and which is a big problem. And in fact, they need another defenseman just like him for the third pairing.
It's really true.
So on the left side, they need to bring in a left-sided version of Connor Murphy. And they're going to be really hard pressed to find that player. It's going to be, it's. I think, like when I think of needs, of like real needs on the team, that's what they really need.
We'll wish we still had Brett Kulak.
Probably we will. Now he's going to sign for a huge amount of money because
he'll make some money this summer, and good for him, right?
He's going to make some money. Like the way he played in the playoffs, like he always does. He just skates so well.
3 years running.
Man. Why can't Darnell Nurse play like that in the playoffs? Like they're such similar skill sets in a certain level, but he just never comes.
Speaking of whom?
Yeah, we can. Hey, I just wanted to say I'm doing a poll right now on Babcock, whether people approve or disapprove of the Oilers hiring Mike Babcock, and it's right now still early in the voting, but it's 61% approve and
right. Yeah, I'm a little surprised it's that high.
39% disapprove. Yeah, and this is on social media where people are generally more critical than by about 10 to 20%.
Tell me about it.
10 to 20% more critical than the fan base, which is more the fan base want things to work out for the Oilers and they hope for they're not as critical generally.
Even if they're suspect, they're still usually willing to let's see how this works out, right?
You will find all the wannabe general managers and judges of the world on X, and I'm one of them, and there I am with my opinion. Darnell Nurse. So the latest thing was kind of a curious or an interesting comment from Bob Stauffer about Darnell Nurse. Let me just see if I can find it. He just is essentially raising that there's 3 teams, as far as he knows, as he puts it, on Darnell Nurse's list of teams he can go to. They're all in the Eastern Conference. But there's other teams, sounds like, in the Western Conference, Chicago and San Jose, who have a lot of cap space, who have contacted the Oilers and are interested in Darnell Nurse. And the Oilers, of course, are motivated to get the best return for Nurse. To do that, they have to do 2 things, Kurt. They really do fundamentally need to be able to walk away from the trade offers if there isn't a good trade there and bring Darnell Nurse back next year. If you can't walk away from the negotiation, you can't win it. So I think it's actually they have to, in Bowman's head, one of the options has to be, we might just stick with Darnell and maybe with Babcock as coach, it'll work out. That has to be a plan. And if that's their thinking, I think it's the right thinking. But the other thing I think they're trying to do here in getting out this information is widen the field, obviously, for Nurse, and to get the message to Nurse, like, hey, Darnell, like, um, why not Chicago? Why not San Jose? And it's interesting to me that, like, those two teams seem to be very appealing because they're on the way up. All these great young players. I mean, San Jose's a nice place to live. Chicago, well, I don't know about Chicago. Uh, People love Chicago too. So they're loaded with great young talent, both those teams. And it's interesting that, like, maybe he doesn't want to play against his former teammates very much. Is that it? Like, it's a possibility. But anyway, that was put out there yesterday by Bob Stauffer on Oilers Now, and I just thought it was interesting. What did you make of it, Kurt?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. In any negotiation where you only have one option, you're losing that negotiation.
Yeah.
Right. Stan has to be confident enough to believe that if the return isn't appropriate, he has to walk away from it.
Yeah.
Right. And I'll say there's no evidence that there is something broken in the dressing room between Darnell Nurse and his fellow players. Right.
Correct. Yeah.
So there's no obvious reason why he couldn't come back and play another season. And I'll be honest, I had the thought while I was listening to DJ Smith today, going, I wonder with a different set of coaches how much different Darnell Nurse would be, because there was a comment at one point this year, and I'm trying to remember who exactly it came from, that at some point somebody, it was a former coach. That's what it was, David. It was a former coach who said, Darnell Nurse was told at one point, you'd be a better defenseman if you did this. But the suggestion was kind of that Darnell kind of nodded his head and smiled, but never really did it. Right?
Yeah, who was saying that? Like, he wants to be, he sees himself as a puck mover.
Yeah, and they never actually nailed out who the coach was. I have my theories who it was, but that never came to pass. But I just wonder if guys with the amount of experience and with the ability to talk straight with their players like Babcock and Smith it's a little later in his career maybe, but wouldn't they have a positive impact on how Nurse plays the game? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. You and I both think it's time that Darnell probably moved on. Best for him and best for the team. But look, if you ask me, well, Kurt, would you be okay if he stuck around for another year? Yeah, if he's willing to adjust how he plays. And if Zach Hyman and Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid are willing to adjust how they play, well, then why wouldn't you?
I've seen a player late in his career change his defensive game somewhat. Tyson Barrie, when he came to the Oilers, his first year was a nightmare. He was pinching rashly all the time. His risk reward was way off. Then the next year, and he got a lot of criticism in Edmonton, and the next year he came back, and he was a much better defensive defenseman. He just toned it down. And that's all Nurse has to do, I think. And the question is, I think Tyson Barrie really wanted to change and probably realized he needed to change. I don't know if that's Nurse. Yeah. It might not be his DNA to be that guy who says, yeah, I really got to change my game.
I can think of two other examples in my experience of watching the National Hockey League. One is Brad Park, and the other one's Randy Carlyle. Both who, at the height of their powers, were spectacular offensive attackers, right? Mm-hmm. But late in their career, when they lost a step or two, they were so smart and understood that they couldn't be the player they used to be. They adjusted and remained really effective NHL players deep into their careers. The really smart guys see it and get it.
So anyway, we'll see what happens. I'm still hoping they can move him and get, and again, I think a few people have made Elliot Friedman was talking about, you'll be surprised about the market for Darnell Nurse. I think that's true. I think what we were saying about how few good players are available right now, it's not easy to find a defenseman like Darnell Nurse. And again, he's been okay to good in the regular season on average. Yes. Just in the playoffs, last 5 playoffs, where he's fallen apart. And that's why I'm good with moving him. I'm not convinced that will ever change. But there's going to be some teams who will want this player a lot, I think. And So I'm still bullish on seeing him go, and I think they can get a good return.
Well, in
At
terms
least
of return,
one.
here's the way I view it. See if you feel the same way, David. I think they either need to bring a good NHL player back and be willing to swallow some salary,
Uh-huh.
or swallow no salary at all and understand that a warm body isn't coming back. I think it's one of those two things.
Yeah. Just like it's like as if you're a UFA and you went to another team and we said goodbye.
Yeah. So it's draft pick prospect country,
For nothing.
but you're not retaining any money.
Or it's just like a 7th-round pick and you got Darnell Nurse kind of thing. That's it.
Yeah, and you've got the
no
9
retention.
point whatever $million worth of cap space, right?
Yeah.
I think it has to be one or the other. You're either going to swallow, probably $2.1 million. I think a lot of teams would take Darnell Nurse as a $7 million player, and I think you'd get a useful NHL player back. But I don't know on which scenario they'll end up.
Alrighty. Well, we got the draft coming up this week, Kurt. And I guess the other news that has a bit of news, Roslovic, sounds like they're going to let him go. And Kapanen, it sounds like whether the owners are letting him go or whether he wants to test for agency. That was actually kind of a very unfirm rumor. It was very shaky, very iffy about what's happening with Kapanen. I think the owners probably want him back, and it's just a matter of figuring out the price. But it sounds like the Roslovic stuff was more firm, that he's not coming back. Any thoughts on those two things?
And for Henrique as well.
And Henrique.
Who I think they admired Adam Henrique, but they just think he's past his due date. I'm always a little reluctant to give up a 20-goal scorer, as I've said this about Jack Roslovic before, but I also don't think he's a prototypical Mike Babcock player. And so this was probably foreseeable. On Kapanen, it'll be interesting. My sense was that Kapanen really liked it in Edmonton, and Edmonton liked him. And I wouldn't be surprised if he has a look around on free agency. He has every right to do so, but then still ultimately decide to come back. But I think you got to be careful with Kapanen, because as enticing as he is inconsistent, has been throughout his career, and more recently has been running into injury issues. You just got to be careful. I'm enticed by Kapanen's tool set as well, but yeah, I just think you have to be cautious with him.
Yeah, I love that line, Kapanen, Draisaitl, and Podkolzin. That they really rocked the playoffs.
Big and fast, right?
I just want to return to one thing you said in terms of the Oilers being set at center. It's interesting that Bob Stauffer has been floating, I think, and I just read this. I don't remember if I heard him saying it, but maybe I did, about maybe a line having Draisaitl and McDavid on it. And then so again, maybe I have that wrong because I can't recall actually hearing Bob saying that. I think I read someone reporting that he said that. I could see RNH as a second line center with two big wingers, Podkolzin and Hyman. It really worked with him and Kane and Hyman in the playoffs. RNH, Kane and Hyman one year. And I could see Draisaitl and McDavid playing together. I don't think it's a bad idea at this point. So we'll see. We'll see if that comes about or not.
I think Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is a third-line
left
player with specialty teams abilities at this point in his career.
You're probably right. It is. I think it's a stretch probably to ask him to do that job, Kurt. Now we've been less than bullish on RNH in the past, and we have been incorrect.
Yeah.
So,
I'm bullish on him. I just think you have to put him in the right spot. As an example, if you have Jason Dickinson in between Ryan Nugent-Hopkins and Trent Frederick, I'll take that third line every day of the week and twice on Sundays.
It could work. Like those are three veteran players. Frederick played well.
Play well defensively.
Years. Yeah, that could work out. And if Frederick doesn't step up, then they got Colton Dock. So
yes.
All right, Kurt. Final thoughts, or are we anything else?
Well, you know what? At the risk of dismissing people's honest feelings about the whole Babcock thing, and hey, I get it, you're certainly entitled to your opinion. For me, it's like I just got a fresh breath of oxygen in me. It's like, okay, we can, this is done. We can stop wringing our hands over this. It's happened, and we can just move forward.
Same. I actually, that's exactly how I feel. They needed to solve this. It was really weighing on the organization, the whole Cassidy thing, and with
Yep,
Vegas and
that's fair.
the turmoil. It was a mess. I think, though, probably within the organization, they've known for at least, I'm guessing they've known for about 3 weeks that it was Babcock. So whereas the fans have been dealing with the anxiety, the players haven't. And you know, it would be the only other thing I'd say is great for Babcock to meet with the top three. Maybe they should have a little get together. Maybe should go make some road trips and get together some of the other players too and meet with them this summer, and maybe that will happen. Maybe he's already talking on the phone. You can also talk by Skype, or not Skype, but by a team viewer or whatever.
And that typically happens these days, right?
Yeah.
So I would be surprised if that didn't happen with him as well.
Because it's not just three players. It's a team, as he himself made clear. Kurt, thank you for talking today.
It was a pleasure, David. Here we go.
Here we go. That's from the Batman movie, right? The Joker said it.
That's right.
People have been using that meme with the Oilers recently.
I ain't joking.
And thanks to all of our listeners, the smartest, wisest, sanest hockey fans in the world, the faithful. And in the meantime, and in between times, this has been another edition of the Cult of Hockey podcast.